Right. Hello. Hello. Welcome. It is
Today?
fabulous Friday. I can't believe we've finally got to the end of the week. What a long week. My God. Now, welcome to the Week Unspun. The Week Unspun is a weekly live look at the world through the eyes of the PR professional. That would be us. And my name is Farzana Baduel. I'm sitting in London. My two brilliant co-hosts, David Gallagher, who's also in London with me, and Doug Downs, somewhere in the magical wilds of Canada. Guys?
Ooh. How are you?
Ooh,
Oh,
what a week! What a week! Hey
Ah,
guys, it's good to see you on the other end of the screen. Thanks for taking us in, Farzana. I just want a quick reminder for people who are new to the show, which is all of you, since it's our only our second episode. But this is I think the world's only live stream looking at the world through the eyes of the PR professional. And we draw inspiration from a few sources. First, there's this mega chat, the advisory club, WhatsApp chat, 1,200 professionals around the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, feeding observations about things that they see. So we draw very heavily from that community, and I hope that those from that community that are here will feel comfortable commenting in the sections. We also draw from Doug and Farzana's Stories and Strategies podcast series, and I will say this in a way that they might not feel comfortable. I think it's the best in our business, and I would
go
sincerely
on.
encourage you,
Keep going.
sincerely encourage you to download it wherever you get your podcast. We try to draw some inspiration, or at least some ideas from our own little heads. And again, we would really like this to be a conversation. So please put your observations. If you think we got something wrong, if you think we missed something, please put in the chats, and we'll do our best to bring them up onto the broadcast. So getting right into it, what a crazy week! And Doug, you might remember on Monday we were talking about this loose ball at a Philadelphia Phillies baseball game.
Yeah,
And we
baseball
thought
Karen.
maybe
That was going to be the story. Baseball
that was going to be
Karen.
and then we had the Trump Epstein birthday card. Then we had
Right.
the Israeli attack on airstrike on Doha. We had the British Prime Minister to the United States resigning. We had a Russian drone strike in Poland. Maybe I'm updating Farzana for the first time in real time. Possible life on Mars, or at least the best indication so
I
far.
saw that.
We had so much to choose from, and then the story emerged on, was it Wednesday, Thursday? The reprehensible, awful killing, shooting, murder of Charlie Kirk in the U.S. And I really think that's where we got to go first. And I know, Doug, you've got some thinking on this.
Yeah.
So I think you should take the first story today.
Well, there is. Thanks, David. There is actually some breaking news on this too. Go ahead and roll video whenever you have a chance. The FBI has officially now, it was broken by President Trump this morning on Fox and Friends, that a suspect is in custody. And I think most of us were okay until the FBI corroborates this. Not so sure. Officially now, the FBI director, Kash Patel, says they do have a suspect in custody, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. He was arrested within 33 hours of the shooting. CNN says he is politically unaffiliated, but this starts to begin the process of helping to fill this vacuum of information that's been out there, because we really still don't have an official motive. I think most of us have leapt to conclusions on this. Like, we sure as hell know what the motive probably was on this, but we don't know for certain. I think that's one of the things we need to talk about, that we're in this vacuum of information right now, and there's misinformation, there's blatant disinformation out there, and an awful lot of people trying to control the narrative. I thought President Trump was extremely divisive in his messaging. Here's an opportunity for a president to try to help build bridges, guys, and he's been extremely divisive. I know he has to play to his audience. I get that. And they're baying for blood. But I thought the Democrat leadership was more, this is wrong, this is awful, end of sentence. I have seen some commentary, particularly on Blue Sky, that's basically saying, yes, the shooting was wrong, but have you heard some of the things that Charlie Kirk said in their effort to control the narrative? And that's, can I just say, that is horrible to do right now. Here's a simile to that. The shooting is wrong, but Charlie Kirk was a bad guy. Here's a simile to that. A woman was raped. That's awful. That should never happen. But have you seen what she was wearing? That to me is the same context. How do you both feel about this control of the narrative that people are trying to establish?
Well, I'll jump in. I hadn't thought about that kind of comparison until you mentioned it before the show, and I'm still processing whether I think it's exactly analogous or not. But I take the point. I do think that kind of the first thing that happened when this news broke on my timelines, which are pretty heavily American, was really kind of a lot of assumptions about what had happened and what it means. And I think that's just human nature. I was in a conversation with somebody that I think in any breaking news story, we bring our own biases and prejudices into the frame, and then we start looking for information to kind of confirm that. So immediately, people assume, oh, he was killed because of his political views or because his comments on other issues related to race or gender, and that could well be the case. But we don't know that was the case. Other people said, oh, he's killed because he said bad things. We don't know that was the case. But I think it almost didn't matter. Once the hair was let loose, we all started kind of forming our own theories about what had happened. And why. I know Farzana wants to comment as well. The other thing that I thought was interesting is that I think most of us got our news. I'm guessing on this. Most of us learned about this not from an actual news source, but from
on
social
Twitter,
media,
on X.
And sometimes they were breaking links to actual news sources, but a lot of times it was news creators, kind of influencers, telling, in case you didn't hear, this happened, and that automatically put it off into a direction that maybe wasn't entirely fact-based. But truly remarkable. Truly remarkable.
From a PR perspective, when somebody passes away, the obituary and what is said after they pass away, it forms part of their legacy. And so what you're also seeing playing out is you're seeing people who are sort of attacking that legacy and others who are defending that legacy. And so that, from a PR perspective, people have always, often thought about how will they be remembered after they pass away. Often they would start thinking about that towards the sort of the latter part of their life. I mean, of course, over here in this instance, we've had him taken in the prime of his life, which is incredibly sad. The other thing I wanted to also say, which is quite disturbing, is, I have a teenage daughter. And so she just came home from school and she said, oh, I just saw the video. I just saw the video of him actually being shot.
Yeah.
And I said, how did that make you feel? She said, well, I wish I didn't see it. And I said, well, how did you see it? She said, oh, well, a friend source, sent it to me because it popped up in her feed. So now you also have the situation where you have, previously these sort of images, very disturbing, very disrespectful as well, to see that. You think about his family, you think about his friends, and you think about the emotional resonance of imagery like that. And that would normally be filtered or at least thought about, should it be put in the public domain, should it not, etc. But now what you're beginning to see is free reign with content like this, children having access to content on social media. And that gives rise to a whole different set of issues where the impact of what people are seeing. And before you used to have producers who would sit and they would really think about the ethics of showing or not showing, and thinking quite rightly about what about the friends and the family and the impact it would have, and do they all know first, before it goes in. But there is no filter. Content now has this level of velocity without filter, and in one way it's a great thing because we feel as if there isn't an agenda-driven lens, and as the public, we want to be close to the truth or to the reality of what happened. But on the other hand, you also had this situation of children coming home from school and and it coming
And
up
seeing
on
it.
it's been WhatsApped to them or sent to them on Snapchat, and we think it's just us having conversations amongst ourselves, but there are children who are discussing this, and also children who all of a sudden it feels quite close to home because it was done at a place of learning. So it feels different.
Another concern is safety and security perceptions. This was at a college, at a university, an organized event. It raises questions about safety policies, safety protocols, risk assessments, screenings. And can I just add in, will there be others who are willing to do this, to be accessible in a public place and put themselves at risk. And still, I mean, Charlie Kirk's whole shtick was rhetoric. It was argument for the sake of argument. And in that context, I can take it as healthy, right? Whether I agreed with Charlie Kirk or not, doesn't matter. It was argument. He had people who believed in what he was saying, and he was offering rhetoric. And I think he was killed for it. We don't completely know motive, but will others be willing to do the same?
I think it's a valid concern. So, sorry, I'm going to cut you off, Farzana. I mean, and again, it kind of speaks to how you see this. Was this a free speech issue? Was it a security issue? Is it a gun safety issue? Which
it's
is kind of
it's all three,
and it can be all three at once. You know, I'm on an advisory board for a U.S. university that has a concealed and open carry permit, and I've been worried, not just because I don't know this is a great idea having kids walk around with guns, but for exactly something like this. So I have to think this has some sort of intended or unintended chilling effect on people's willingness to speak in public places.
Yeah, and the risk of retribution for this too, of a revenge strike is high, very high right
well,
now.
And this goes back to your
Defcon 1.
Yeah, and I don't think that the initial comments from the White House were helpful.
No,
in that regard. I think in that moment, the time is to cool things down, wait for facts to come in, urge people to think about their families and their communities, not think about who they can punish. And so I am worried that kind of unleashed some not very helpful energy.
So, question, guys: who do you think got it right? Who responded to it with empathy and not going down the sort of polarized route and scoring points? Who do you think actually you looked at their response and you thought, yeah, that's leadership?
As an organized group, the leadership within the Democratic Party. What I saw from Bernie Sanders last night, it was a 12-minute video. He could have taken 30 seconds to say it, but he basically condemned the shooting, said there's no room for this in American politics or American culture, and it's just wrong. Took him 12 full minutes to actually spit all that out because he loves to hear himself talk. But that's the right way to go right now. So in this particular place, I thought the Dems got it right. I know Trump has to play to his audience. I know they're angry. I know they're baying for blood here, and he's got to touch on that. But there was an opportunity to build a bridge here as a president. And instead, he did everything he could to quash any bridges that existed.
Yeah, I thought he did a good job. I thought Ezra Klein, who's a columnist for the New York Times, had a pretty thoughtful piece, basically saying that whatever you thought about Kirk, this, talking about your beliefs, whether people find them offensive or not, is how it's meant to work. And you should be able to have these conversations without risking your life, even if some of the things you say are about gun safety and gun violence and empathy and things like that. So I thought Ezra got it mostly right. The Republican governor of Utah, I thought, had a pretty good press conference initially as well. So yeah,
what was good about his press conference?
Well, same points. That there's no room for violence in the political sphere, and he spoke very passionately as a Utahn. I think that's what they're called. So I thought he got it right as well. No finger pointing, no retribution, no calls for war. I mean, there were literally prominent political accounts saying that this is the beginning of a war. This is the first shot of a civil war. And I get it, or I sort of get it. Temperatures are hot. Fever, at a fever pitch right now. I do think the news will move on, but I worry about it having kind of a longer term effect. And you have no idea what sort of seeds have been planted right now.
He did make sure to mention that Utah has the death penalty, though, didn't he? In his news conference, he pumped that out right away. So
yeah. I don't know if anybody got
not funny,
perfect, but yeah, he did. He definitely did. And so now details are emerging about this, alleged shooter. Probably has a different profile maybe than some people would have expected. I think all too sadly, in many cases like this, shooters are usually troubled young men. I mean, this seems to be the pattern, and I'm sure people are going to parse through all of his posts and statements and videos and try to see some sort of pattern. I'm guessing you're going to see something kind of politically ambiguous, and what you're really going to see was a very troubled young man.
Yeah. I'm already seeing posts calling him a Republican and posts calling him a Democrat and a socialist. Just all over the spectrum. So.
Well, what in the big group chat, people were really quick to point out, because there was so little information, the world was quick to fill in the information void with all sorts of theories and misinformation. And then the bots jumped in, and then it became almost impossible to really see what was happening. So I saw everything from, this was a false flag operation, this was a distraction, like literally the White House ordered the hit to change the subject from Epstein to, I saw all sorts of fairly outlandish theories, but picking up some traction in the conversation. And I think that's just the last thing I would say is, as an American worried about the state of things, I mean, things are really messed up right now. I'm not naive. The U.S. has a long history of violence, gun violence. It has a long history of political violence. This isn't that new, but it does seem to be really happening at a frenetic pace, and I don't know how to wind it back, and I don't know what leadership is in place to wind it back or get us to a calmer level of discourse.
Amen.
Well, I don't know if we want to linger on that topic any longer. That was a kind of an obvious one for us to talk through. One thing, and I apologize for not mentioning this last week when we piloted this show. One weekly source of inspiration. I'm going to embarrass you both, but I like the way you stand back from the heat of the moment and the news of the day, and look at bigger or just evergreen types of topics. Issues that affect the PR community. And this, I'm talking about
on the podcast.
Sorry, going back to your podcast. So Stories and Strategies podcast, available wherever you get your favorite audio listening edification. I loved your conversation with Fred Cook, who's at the University of Southern California. I think that's my dream job. I've known Ed since we were competitors for a long time, and then he moved into academia, and I really liked that conversation. And then your conversation with Heather Blundell this week, I literally stopped. I remember I was walking to the grocery store, and this conversation about women leaving PR, not for all the reasons that have been widely discussed, but because of menopause. And that just, it makes perfect sense when I heard it, but I had never heard that before. And I don't know, did it just come up in the conversation?
Because we were talking about women, leadership at APR agencies. It's quite rare, especially sort of international agencies, and so she said, well, they don't just leave at sort of when they start having children. It's and she quoted some research that actually demonstrates that most of women leave when they're at perimenopause and menopause, and it's often because companies don't have a policy. There isn't a wider awareness amongst colleagues in terms of the transition that women go through. And of course, one size doesn't fit all. Every woman goes through a different perimenopause and menopause, different symptoms, and that's what makes it really hard. And so she obviously said that she's been championing this within her agency to ensure that awareness is there. And she said sometimes women do not even know what they are going through is actually due to the hormone fluctuations during perimenopause. And even the word perimenopause, a lot of people aren't familiar with it. They sort of know menopause, but perimenopause is that phase before the menopause. And with the hormone fluctuations, it has an impact in all sorts of aspects of the way we think and we behave. And not knowing what's going on in our bodies and not having a wider discussion and policies in place in companies makes it that much harder, where women then end up sort of thinking there's something not quite right with themselves, and then they end up just leaving the workplace, and it's incredibly sad. But I do think the silver lining is that we're getting to know about it. I mean, I didn't know anything about menopause and perimenopause, and then about 5 years ago, we had in the UK this lovely late presenter called Davina McCall. She started doing all these documentaries about it, started talking about it, and all of a sudden, you've had companies sort of wake up and say, well, let's have a policy about it. And it's all part of the inclusion agenda, is to understand from an employee perspective the life cycle for the different types of employees that a company will have, and understanding the points that they need support and understanding and awareness and empathy for the co-workers. And I think that will help in terms of retaining senior talent, and that will also prevent having organizations that are at the top just men, because the women have left because there isn't much research or advocacy around perimenopause and menopause. So let's hope that with this conversation and many more to come, that awareness will change. But as men, David and Doug, how familiar are you? Is it something that's new, that's sort of like come into your sort of information sphere? What's your take on it?
Last couple of years for me, just where I'm at in my life, where my wife is at in her life, as I gained experience to that. But through the podcast, I had when I was managing teams and a staff in public relations, completely blind to whether any of them were experiencing this. And I've been looking backward to think, wow, I wonder if that issue that I had at that point in time with that staff member, I'm wondering if I just mishandled that completely badly because I was blind to this. Call it woke if you will, but awareness is probably a better term. So I've just more recently become aware of this.
So, and Doug, you became aware of it obviously with your wife. Now I've got a comment from Amanda Cole Kenyon. She says, this conversation is so important to help normalize conversations regarding the changing seasons of women's lives and the impact it can have on careers and advancement. And it's a big topic in my coaching practice. Now, David, over to you. I wanted to just, if you can, what's your response to Amanda's comment?
Well, hey, Amanda, thanks for that. It's good, always good to hear from my good friend Amanda. We worked together for a number of years, and she's right. It is an important topic. Like Doug, it wasn't personal to me until my wife went through it, and I began to understand what the real day-to-day challenges are. Interestingly, and just by coincidence, professionally, I've been involved with hormone-related conversations from a client that I worked with 25 years ago. And just yesterday, I talked to a group of students from Boston University who were visiting here in London about a case study related to how hormone replacement therapy was used. This isn't a side commercial for HRT, but the conversation we started, the first attempt to get women to talk to their doctors about menopause started with promoting science around the benefits of HRT to reduce certain types of certain diseases, cardiovascular disease, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's. And what we found is that the more we promoted that science, the more successful we were of getting that science in front of menopausal women, the less likely they were to have conversations with their doctor. And it wasn't until we started talking to women, we said, actually, let's not talk to the doctors, let's not talk to the scientists. What are you interested in? What do you care about? And the things they wanted to talk about were remaining vital at work, remaining intimate with their partners, remaining some, sense of positive feminine identity. And talks about osteoporosis and Alzheimer's and cardiovascular disease was exactly not what they needed to hear to have a real conversation with their doctors. And this is a 25-year-old case study. So we seem to need to remember time and time again that facts and science are important to put structure and validity to what we're doing, but how people feel is very real and actually more important for how they're going to receive that information. All of which is, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm glad Heather was so open and honest in her conversation with you, and I think it's an important thing for us to keep in mind. If you don't mind, I'm going to move us on because we got a couple other things to get through, and I'm glad we moved the Charlie Kirk story up in the running list because I think it's important and it is breaking. And I'm looking at my phone to make sure we're not missing anything that's happening right now. But a story I wanted to talk about, and I actually been following this for a couple of weeks, which was originally framed and written by our friend Arun Sudhaman in his excellent newsletter. It's pretty new, 6 issues out, I think, called Earn First. And he wrote about something he calls the great unbundling. And it's this idea that really there's this surge of senior talent, almost unprecedented, maybe literally unprecedented, in the PR space. These are people who were leaving agencies. Maybe they got tired of it. Maybe the agencies didn't need them on the payroll anymore, but there are a lot of really, really good people in circulation, out in the wild right now. And I think it's a more important story than we're realizing. I think it's shifting the communications ecosystem around a little bit. It means agencies have access to talent that maybe wasn't available for them because they're now free agents. I mean, some agencies are a little bit vulnerable because they've lost people that they couldn't keep busy 365 days a year, but they needed them for 5 days a year. And it's giving clients, maybe a little more optionality in terms of how they bring people in. And this is a subject for another day, but that's kind of what our Fulgate proposition is built on, that there is a lot of really good talent available now that wasn't available before. And I think this is as important in the short run as all the conversations we're having about AI. And maybe it's the other side of the coin, but I hate pigeonholing it under AI. But I think it's a really important story, and I really urge people to give Arun's article a look. And I don't know if you guys have a reaction to that or not. I think
I wanted to know why. Like why is there this great unbundling? What precipitated this huge exodus?
Well,
is it
Arun's
AI?
piece,
is it costs? What's the reason?
Arun's piece was focused mostly on larger agencies that were merging, and that was kind of the focal point. And he talked about, I think there's a few different advisory firms have sprung out of the aftermath of some mergers and some kind of workforce reduction. So that's the lens that he looked at, and I think it's accurate and valid. But I actually think there's more to it than that. I do think we're at a place in the business cycle where senior people are expensive, and agencies are under a lot of pressure to kind of contain costs, and it's hard to keep some specialists billable 365 days a year. So I think there's a lot of pressure to reduce costs, and it means that people who are perfectly good, they've got really good qualifications, experience, are like I say, they're free agents. And so I think you're going to see more startup agencies. I think you're going to see more things like what we're trying to do at Fulgate. You're going to see people going in-house in different ways. You're going to see fractional advisors. So it's a pretty profound shift in the way senior expertise is distributed across.
So very agile, a lot more agile working. And I think also from a client perspective, gone are the days where you just have this annual retainer every year. You've got lots of projects coming in and out, and it makes it very difficult for resource planning. And then if you've got senior staff for resource planning and you cannot actually ascertain the revenue that will be coming in the next 12 months because of the lack of annual contracts, and you're left with sort of bitty contracts, it's really hard actually. So I totally get why.
David, is there ageism playing in there at all? Is ageism, because that's a very real thing?
Yeah, I hear that. I hear people say that a lot, that they're made to feel less relevant, that they are made, to feel less valuable. And I think that can be, that can definitely be a factor. In my experience, it just means there's really good people, and if in whatever setting we're in, if we can figure out ways to take advantage of that, I think we'll all benefit. I've done a terrible job of managing time, and now we're down to like 3 minutes, and there were so many things I wanted to get into. I'm just going to touch on these really fast, and I'm not going to give justice to the people who contribute this, but these are things that we talked about earlier that I thought were interesting from the text chat. From the crisis and risk communications conversation, which is always rich, always got something interesting. There was a story about a New York Times story, very well researched, very well reported, about their relationship. Sorry, not the New York Times, about the Bank of America. No, sorry, JP Morgan. I'm starting all sorts of rumors of this. JP Morgan's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, over years and decades, with billions of dollars moving back and forth. A remarkable story. And what I ask about that is, are we misunderstanding reputation? Many organizations would not survive a story like this. And from what I can tell, I don't see that there's been much damage at all. It's just been reported. There's a lot more to come.
Yeah.
But I just wonder, sometimes we seem to think, oh, your actions speak louder than your words. And these were bad actions and bad words about those actions. And I haven't seen any reputational damage done to that. I think it's a big question.
I think so many more of the pots are made with Teflon these days. Things just don't stick, right? And it's because we have less trust in institutional sources of information. Right away, everything I see is, where's that source from, right? Who wrote that? Who said that? And if it's a source, I won't name the ones, but if it's a source that I've come to mistrust, okay, CBC here in Canada, don't trust it at all. then I'm less likely to pay any attention to it, and I'm more likely to entrench. And that's why independent voices are rising up. I find the independent voice whose opinion is already my own, which makes me smart, right? Because they're saying the things that I already believe in, and I'll spend more time with them. So we're just entrenching and burrowing and digging deeper holes. That's my thought on that.
Yep, I think you're right. I'm just going to quickly go through a couple more. We're not the BBC, so we could probably go 2 minutes overtime without getting fined.
Yeah, but, that's fine.
But I know other people probably. I know people have budgeted their time accordingly. There was a piece that I don't know where it originally appeared, but Andrew Bruce Smith, who's a great contributor in one of the larger subchats on artificial intelligence, put it into the conversation, and it was from FT Strategies, the consulting group at the Financial Times, called the News Creators Project. And it was a look at, and this touches on the Charlie Kirk story, this rising cadre of social media influencers who are actually the source of news for an increasing, and I'm going to say, not now, soon, majority source of news consumption. And they break it down into people who are doing investigative work, people who are explaining what's happening, and then people who are just commenting on what other people have done. And I think it's a really important document for us to look at. And I want to thank Andrew for contributing that. I mentioned he hosts this another chat on artificial intelligence. It's the second biggest chat in the group, in the community. It's really a fantastic resource of new ideas, new tools, new services. They do little mini reviews. They give there's contributors around the world. It's a very generous, very open conversation. The only way to really experience it is to join that chat. And I'm sorry I can't do justice for it. Andrew, I'm sorry, it's kind of the Andrew show. He had suggested a book that he thought people should read. And I don't know if we've got a graphic on that, but he's been thinking about how work processes and workflows go. This book isn't specifically about AI, but his point was, and there's a lot of great commentary on it, is that if you want to use AI to improve your workflow, you kind of have to know what your workflow is to start with. And most of us don't, and I run agencies and I've been asked to try to document what our workflow was. And it was pretty hard to do. It's pretty hard to even just get us to work to a standard methodology. So I thought that was great. My book of the week, my suggestion is by a US economist named Kyla Scanlon. It's called In This Economy. She talks about vibes and how vibes actually move markets more than facts or data. And I think that, again, our misunderstanding of the interplay with a rational mind, I think we assume that there's a lot more facts and data at play when really it's more vibes. So her book is called In This Economy, and her name is Kyla Scanlon. And by the way, she's my social media feed of the week too. She does a great series of explainers on Instagram. Last thing I'm going to say, and there's a jobs board that a woman named Sonia Cullington here in the UK, just out of the goodness of her heart, curates. And it's the second, or actually it might even be bigger than the AI chat, where she posts jobs that come across her feed. And now many other people are posting jobs that are available. It's a great, almost like library of resources. So I asked her to pick the job of the week, and the job of the week she picked is a search for an AI strategist for an organization here in the UK called Women in Data. And I just thought that was a thoughtful pick, because we had a lot of conversations about how underrepresented women are in data STEM anyway, but also specifically in AI. And this was a job. Last thing, Farzana, you mentioned something about this last week, and I failed to get what you were saying, but you started it. You've got a weekly column now, right?
Yeah,
the PR Insider. Yeah, so I'm sorry to surprise you with that, but
so it's my parents are from Kashmir, and so I obviously have a cultural sort of familiarity with South Asia, and I've been to Sri Lanka many times because I've got lots of friends there, and I absolutely love Sri Lanka. It used to be called Serendip, which I think is so apt, because you just feel this incredible serenity when you're there. I was offered a column by their national newspaper called the Daily Mirror, nothing to do with our Daily Mirror in the UK. And I just thought, I'm a yes person. So I'm like, yes, why not? I've never done a column before. And so I did the first column, and now I have this sort of every week I have to deliver 1,200 words at the end of sort of Sunday. And I'm now thinking, oh my God, what did I say yes to? So I need to sort of master that discipline. But I thought it would help me have more empathy with journalists and columnists, because, of course, we're always pitching to them. But it would help me understand actually what they go through, how they find stories, who they consider a credible source. So I'm really enjoying this little empathy exercise I'm going to have in sort of trying the hat of a columnist. And I've got this great friend called William Sitwell, who's a columnist for The Telegraph. So I'm meeting him on Tuesday to give me tips on how to be a good columnist. And one of the things that we did talk about in the past is, journalists, they hold PR, they hold sort of power to account, and PRs, we hold sort of invoices to power. And so we're going to have a chat on Tuesday. He's going to give me some advice. I'll share it in our next week's session about how to be a good columnist, because I am literally blind to what it takes.
Well, I read your piece on soft power, and I thought it was great. And in fact,
Thank
now
you.
I put it all together, because last week you were talking about soft power. It's like, how the hell does she know so much about this? I didn't realize you'd done all this research for your column. So now
it's my
I
thing.
got it.
Yeah.
So now that you're in newspapers, can we call you Scoop?
Yeah, you can. And if there's any stories, you want to pitch to me, I may just ignore you.
That's right. That's right. Ghost.
Well, guys, we're 5 minutes over, and I know we didn't get to a lot of the things we want to. So
can I share one comment? David, just one comment from our lovely, from lovely Kevin. It was just a comment about the earlier conversation about the sort of the independents that have been unbundled. So Kevin says that it's also client driven. They don't want junior support; they want senior support that big agency cannot afford to provide dedicated support. Independents are cost efficient, and absolutely, when you're coming to resource planning and you can't foresee sort of 12 months of resource in a particular expertise, then it makes sense to bring in the independents. And yes, they are cost efficient. So thank you, Kevin, for that.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm sorry, I can't see the comments the way I need to lay out my screen better. So I'm relying on you. So thanks for that. But I am going to take us out in respect for everybody's time. Thank you, as always, to our producers. Doug, you want to say something?
Yeah, I have one final thought that I wanted to share.
Please.
Yep, final thought. Sorry. In light of our top story was the Charlie Kirk issue, I'm encouraging you watching, listening, is to find someone in your life that you disagree with, fundamentally disagree with. Have a conversation with them and just listen. Don't do anything to try to change their mind. Just listen and seek to understand. That's my challenge to anyone watching or listening. And I'll do that too.
That's gonna be so hard for me. I just can't shut up sometimes, but I think it's a worthy endeavor. So I want to thank. I know you'll join me in thanking our producers, Emily Page and David Ojidi. So much work goes into just pulling up random things that we think about, and they find the images, but they bring the whole show together. The Week Unspun is a production of Curzon PR Stories and Strategies and Folgate Advisors. We'll try to figure out a way to share some of the links to the things we went through quickly. I know we can do it in LinkedIn, but we'll find another way to do that. If you want to join the Advisory Club Mega Chat, just get in touch with me. Please follow Stories and Strategies, subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and I hope you have a safe, peaceful weekend. And thanks, everybody. Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Farzana.
And cheers, Stuart.